And Mary said, "My soul exalts the Lord, and my spirit has rejoiced in God my Savior. For he has had regard for the humble state of his bondslave. For behold, from this time on, all generations will count me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is upon generation after generation toward those who fear him. He has done mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who were proud in the thoughts of their heart. He has brought down rulers from their thrones and has exalted those who were humble. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent away the rich empty-handed. He has given help to Israel, his servant, in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham and his descendants forever." And Mary stayed with her about 3 months and then returned to her home. This is God's word for us today.
All right, open up your Bibles to Luke chapter 1. Luke chapter 1. Just open it up to Revelation. That's where we were. Here's where we are, Luke chapter 1. If you want to use one of the Bibles nearby, the orange Bibles we got laying around in front of you or behind you, it's on page 883 if you need that. Luke chapter 1. Is anyone sick of Christmas music? Okay, we got a few. Does anybody want Christmas music to last for a couple more months? Okay, all right, okay. We're not the extremes, all right? I can't think of another time in our life as a culture that I can go to the gas station, the gym, and the coffee shop and hear the same song playing. All right? Usually it's very different experiences in all three of those, but this past week I was paying attention to the music that we oftentimes is in the background, and it's really all the same. And I think the music really defines this season that we are in, right? It is. Can you imagine being today in December and not hearing like Jingle Bells, or let's be honest, All I Want for Christmas Is You, right? That's the beginning of the holiday season when Mariah Carey gets defrosted and played in your living room. For some of you, that was November 1st. Some of you have not done that yet, but it's coming. But the music really defines the season and really, I think, captures the essence and the feeling that we want to have with our Christmas holiday. So I thought, kind of as a way of stepping into this a little bit fun, I wanted to do a quick round of Don't Forget the Lyrics. Now, you know how Don't Forget the Lyrics works? We'll read a portion of the lyrics, there'll be some blank, and you have to finish the lyrics. I want you to imagine, you're not in church, but I want you to imagine you're at Family Feud right now. The game show, not your holiday gathering. And we're going to put this on the screen. This requires a degree of participation. Right, I'm not wearing a Steve Harvey suit this morning, but I just want you to put yourself there. And we're going to just celebrate kind of the Christmas music here for a second, and we'll test your knowledge. These are going to go from what I think is easier to harder. You may disagree. Don't write me an email. But this is how it's going to go. I'm going to read the lyric. There's going to be a blank on the screen. And when you know it, just shout out the blank on the screen. Don't go further than that. We don't have time for a Christmas carol sing-along this morning. But, all right, so here we're going to do the first one. I'm going to read this. And then once you know it, shout it out. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Okay, that's about as easy as it can get, right? Number 2, I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus. Good. Number 3, last Christmas I gave you my heart, but the very next day, you gave it away. What a great song by Wham. All right. 4th, on the 3rd day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 3 French hens. I figured on that one, you have to sing the first 2 lines of the song before you remember it. I thought about making that on the 7th day, but we didn't have time for that. All right, you're doing really good so far. Okay, here's the last one. He has scattered the proud because of the thoughts of their hearts. He has toppled the mighty from their thrones. Is that not in your Christmas playlist? You don't hear that when you're shopping at Target or wherever it is that you get your Christmas music, right? This is not often what we think of or what we hear of when we hear Christmas carols. But in reality, this is the first Christmas song that's ever written by Mary, the mother of Jesus, in the text that we just read this morning. This text, often called the Magnificat, is really written as a psalm or a song. Mary was likely kind of composing this in her mind and in her memory as she's traveling to Elizabeth's house, or maybe even after the fact when Luke gathered this story. She had written this to reflect on all the things that happened in her life in really just the span of about a week. Over the course of about a week, she received this announcement from the angel Gabriel that she was going to carry the life of the Son of God. And then that conception happened miraculously through the power of the Holy Spirit. She traveled to her relative Elizabeth's house, and Elizabeth blessed her and celebrated her and affirmed the pregnancy that was in her womb. And then, kind of in response to all those things, Mary sings or crafts this song of worship. But this song is not what we tend to think of when we think of holiday songs or Christmas songs. Instead of snow falling, there are kings and princes falling, right? It sounds more like a revolution or a political anthem than it does a Christmas carol. But what we're going to find as we explore Mary's song today, as we continue to explore her as kind of this template for a disciple or a student of Jesus, is that worship and how we live our lives in public go hand in hand. That the songs that we sing have to lead to a particular kind of life in public. And as we understand Jesus and his way, and really the Bible's imagination for worship, is that the songs we sing and the lives we lead have to coincide. And I think when we talk about worship in particular, which this is a song of worship that Mary crafts, we tend to think first and foremost about kind of what we just did. We gathered in a community. We sang a few songs with lyrics on the screen. That may be the first, or really maybe the only thing that you think of when you think of worship. Or you think of maybe a radio station or a particular music artist that you put on, and as soon as you're listening to it, you kind of feel this sense of calm or peace or enthusiasm for Jesus, and that's kind of what we think of worship. Or you think of worship as just that thing that you do when you go to church around Christmas time. Right? Worship is kind of like Christmas carols. Like we sing them, we don't really know what they're saying. We don't really think about the words. It feels a little antiquated, but we'll sing it because it's Christmas or because we're in church. But wherever you are in kind of your understanding of worship, this morning I just want to explore Mary's song here and really kind of look at three aspects of her song. And so if you're a note taker or an outliner, here's kind of some things to hang into. First, I want to just look at from Mary's song what worship actually is. Like when it is that we are worshiping, what actually is happening. The second thing that I want to explore is where that comes from, or where does worship come from? How do I get it? What happens when it's in me, right? And then thirdly, after we talk about what worship is, where it comes from, and then I want to just talk about where it leads us in our life, both as individuals and as a community. All right, so let's first talk about what worship is. If you look at your text in front of you, if you have it open, Luke chapter 1, verse 46, Mary begins this song by telling us what's happening inside of her. She says, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior." These two words, magnify and rejoice, she uses to describe what's going on inside of her. And from here, we can see what worship is. Worship is two things. It is lifting up, and it is then looking to. It is lifting up, and it is looking to. The first word that she uses, magnify. When you magnify something, it is big in your vision. I don't know when the last time was you looked through a magnifying glass or a telescope. That's the idea of magnify, is this thing that maybe seems small, or this thing that seems far off, all of a sudden is filling my vision. Just my soul is filled with the vision of this big thing that God has done for me. Worship is magnifying who God is in her mind and in her soul. But the second word she uses is rejoice. This is another word you could use for this is exalt, or to just literally lift something up. I'm holding this thing up on high. I'm exalting what God has done in my life over the past few days. And so worship is to lift something up, to exalt something, and then to magnify it, or to look at it, to keep my attention and my focus on it. In the Bible, towers and temples were always built on elevated places. You may be familiar with the Psalm 121, "I lift my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from?" You would always put a tower or a temple in an elevated place. It was safe and secure from attack, but it also provided security because you kind of see at a far distance what is coming. And so you'd elevate this thing that would provide you safety and security. So this is what we do when we worship. When we worship, we lift something up, and then we look to it for safety or security or belonging or meaning or purpose or love. We lift it up and we say, if I could just have that, that would give me what I really want. You see, it's so important to understand that dynamic because that means that worship is not primarily what happens when I'm singing. It's not primarily what happens when I'm in a religious gathering. If worship is lifting up and then looking to something, that means two things. All of us do that, and we do that all the time. All of us worship, and we worship all the time, not just when I'm singing. All of us lift something up in our lives and think, if I could just have that, that would bring me security, belonging, or happiness. The church historian, theologian John Calvin described these as idols of the heart. My heart is looking for something, longing for something. Thomas Keating called these emotional programs for happiness. It's the way that I think that I will finally find happiness or contentment in my life. We have these deep things that we think, if I could just have that, then I would be safe, secure, or happy. But if that's worship, then that really happens all the time. I am always holding something up in my mind or my heart or my imagination and looking to it to say, if I could get that, then I'd be happy. If I could get that, then I would be content. That means I'm worshiping not just when I'm in a religious gathering singing songs, but when I'm in the grocery store line looking at the magazines, when I'm scrolling or doom scrolling on my phone, when I'm filling my cart with various different things that I think I need or that I think will be happy, make me happy, when I'm anxiously waiting for a text response from somebody who I think brings me the happiness or contentment that I want. You see, we worship all the time. Worship is not just what happens when I sing. Worship is what happens when my soul lifts something up and looks to it for something ultimate. Pastor Tim Keller, in his book, Counterfeit Gods, defined what he called the three most common things that we do that we worship in our culture: money, sex, and power. He said, I lift up money, and I think if I could just have a little bit more, then I'd be happy. If I could just have a little bit more, then I'd be content. If I could just have a little bit more, then I would have freedom to do the things that I want to do. We lift up sex and relationships and think, if I could just find the right person, if I could just find the right partner, if they could just finally be happy with me, then I would find the contentment and the joy that I've been looking for. Or we hold up power and think, man, if I could just make things happen in my life, if I could just get more people to listen to me, if I could just get a little bit higher on the org chart, if I could just get a little bit more influence, then I would finally have the thing that I want. We lift it up and we look to it. We're worshiping it. And that means, especially if you're not a very religious person, right, maybe you're just checking in because it's the holidays, like it's Christmas, it's kind of what you do before the things that happen in your home, right? It's important to stop and just consider, like, what is it in your life, in your soul, in your heart that you have been lifting up and looking to this year? There's something that you've been saying, man, if I could just have that, if I could just find that, if I could just have that happiness or that contentment or that approval or that promotion, whatever it is that in your soul you're lifting up and looking to, that's your God. That's what you're worshiping. And the important thing to consider is to be aware of what that is, because you know what happens when you look to something is you tend to drift that way. Like, have you ever been driving and your attention kind of gets distracted a little bit, and before long you've kind of subtly, the wheel has turned and you're like moving towards the thing that you're looking towards? I do this, and it's not very good, right? It's kind of dangerous, right? But that's what happens in our hearts. As I'm looking to something, and before long my decisions, my emotions, my anxiety begin to be oriented around that thing. This is why Tim Keller said in that same book, he said, idols control us. They control us since we feel that we must have them in life or life is meaningless. And whatever controls us is our Lord. Meaning whatever you're lifting up and looking to, you have a God in your life, even if you're an atheist. There's something that you're looking to. And so the question then is, if that's what happens in us, and all of us do that, and we do that all the time, then where does that really come from? In other words, how can you be more aware of or mindful of where that worship is happening in your life? Take a look at for Mary where worship comes from in verse 48. He has looked with favor on the humble condition of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed, because the Mighty One has done great things for me, and his name is holy. His mercy is from generation to generation on those who fear him. Notice where her worship comes from. Her worship comes from remembering what God has already done for her. Right? The origin of this magnification and this exaltation comes from her thinking about what God has already done for her. She's not trying to generate a worshipful kind of experience or a worshipful emotion. She's instead looking back and reminding herself what she has seen and heard already. I mean, and most immediately, she's remembering the past week. An angel came to me, explained to me that God was going to begin this rescue mission through this miraculous child in my womb. She then visited her relative Elizabeth, who had her own miraculous conception going on as well. And then Elizabeth blesses her and celebrates her. And then in response to all of that, Mary worships. See, worship is not something that I generate. It's something that I respond in. It's something that comes out of what I remember. And it's interesting because if you read her song, like, she's remembering things that she wasn't even a part of. Right? She's hyperlinking back to Abraham and the story of the Old Testament. You see, she's part of a community that remembers. Right? I think sometimes we imagine worship as like an individual thing. And even like a gathering like this, it's like we're a bunch of individuals. And sometimes like you can kind of imagine worship as like closing my eyes and I'm having a moment with God. But that moment that you have with God only exists within the community. You need a community of people who can affirm the work of God in your life, who can remember how God has worked in your life when you don't remember how he's worked in your life. You need a community of people who can look at your life like Elizabeth looks at Mary's life and say, yeah, that's God working in your life. Right? We don't worship as individuals, we worship as a community. We hold the tradition together. We hold the stories together. We affirm and remind each other what God is doing, even when I don't feel like it. That's why you can worship at home in your living room, but it's so much better to worship in a community, in person, where like sometimes I don't feel like singing, but I listen to everyone else sing, and I'm like, okay, I guess I should sing. I guess I need to be reminded of these things. Worship is a community thing that we do together. And so when you come in on a Sunday and you just don't feel like it, but you're willing to stand there and you're willing to sing, you don't know, like that's not just between you and God, that's between you and the person next to you too. Like I need to hear you sing that, so that my soul can be reminded of that, so that I can sing. We do this together. Now notice Mary remembers a few things in particular about God that drive this worship in here. There's three things that she reminds herself about God in this song. It's God's power, God's holiness, and God's mercy. God's power, God's holiness, and God's mercy. And first and foremost, she sees God's power. She sees that he is able to accomplish things that no one could accomplish for her. She calls God the Mighty One, right? Not a mighty one, but the Mighty One. That he is this powerful, all-powerful God that she has received this mercy from. Now, in the backdrop of this song, Luke wants you to be thinking about another song. In fact, probably one of the most important songs in the Bible, and that's the Song of Moses. The first song that was ever written and recorded in Scripture in Exodus chapter 15. In Exodus, God rescues the Hebrew people from slavery under an oppressive regime from Pharaoh, and Moses leads them to cross the Red Sea. You maybe know the Ten Commandments of the Prince of Egypt, depending on your generation, right? The story is that they cross the sea on dry land, and then as Pharaoh's army is rushing through that dry bed, God brings all that water and crushes their army. He defeats them. But in that song, Moses, then, he sings an entire chapter of music right after that. It's probably one of the most important and hyperlinked stories and songs in the Old Testament. But Moses describes God as moving with a mighty outstretched arm. And he scatters the armies of the nations on behalf of the people. Mary likely grew up hearing that song, singing that song in their community. And so when she goes to craft this song of like, what has God done for me? She first thinks about Exodus. She first thinks about God's mighty power that rescued them. And what she's in effect reflecting on is that what God is doing is he's bringing a new Exodus for his people. He's bringing a new liberation for his people, a new rescue for his people. Like he formed us in the past through the waters of the Red Sea, he's now forming a new community, experiencing a new liberation, not through the waters of the Red Sea, but through the waters of birth. the waters of what he is doing through this child that's now growing in her womb. Saying that same God that did that is now doing a new thing now. See, God is powerful. He's more powerful than we imagine. He's more powerful than we give him credit for. And see, that's good news, because what happens when we are lifting something up, we're looking to it, what we're really saying is, I hope that you're more powerful than me. I hope that you can do for me what I can't do for myself. And so even our expectation is that, if God is out there, if God is real, then he's powerful. And what you find in the God of the Bible is that he is more powerful than you imagine. He created everything not with his hands, but with his words. All right, that's a lot of power. If he can bring something out of nothing with just speaking it, like that is power that you can't fathom. It's power that you cannot contain. The God of the Bible is powerful, more powerful than you even realize. And that's what we need when we worship something. We need something that's bigger than us. But not only what's bigger than us, like if you think about it, like what you really need is a person. Right? You need a powerful person. Right? A powerful object is fine, I guess. But it doesn't actually know what you need. It doesn't actually know the situation that I'm dealing with. Like, I don't know if you've interacted with chatbots lately, but they're dumb. Like they're getting smarter, which is scary. But I can say, hey, I'm kind of thinking through this, I'm dealing with this, and like what it gives me is like kind of okay, but it's not. It doesn't really know me. Like what I know, if I need something that's powerful, if I'm going to look to something and lift it up and say, would you come through for me? I need a person. And that's exactly what we find in the God of the Bible is an all-powerful person who acts. That's who he is. And so Mary worships God because of that. But the second thing that she highlights actually creates a bit of a problem for us, and here's why. She worships his holiness. He is powerful and he's holy. Now, we don't use the word holy a whole lot in our everyday vocabulary, at least not in maybe a positive sense, right? But to be holy means to be set apart, to be one of a kind. I was thinking about this past week in our house growing up. We had this antique porcelain nativity set. They did not make it anymore. I don't know where it came from. It probably was like a miraculous thing from Jesus at some point. That's how we handled it. Because at that point I'm like 10 years old, and you bring the thing out. It's all in bubble wrap, and you bring each thing out. And it was kind of this cool moment where we kind of talked about each character, but I handled that thing with care, because I knew if I dropped it, like there was no replacing it. Like it was set apart. It was special. It was elevated. It was different. There's nothing like it, and there's no replacing it. Like that's what God is like. He is one of a kind. He is holy. And so he's a person, and he's powerful, but he's not like you and me. He is above. He is different. He is perfect in his judgments. He's perfect in his wisdom. He's perfect in his goodness. He's perfect in his love. There is no competition with him. And on the one hand, that means that the God of the Bible is the only safe place for your worship. It's the only safe place for your worship. Right? Because if there are lots of gods, then you have to worry about, okay, is this the right God for this situation? If I worship this God, then is this God going to be mad at me? Right? But if there's only one God, if that one God is holy, then that is the safe, right place for your worship. You are looking to the right thing. You are lifting the right thing up when you worship God. But there's also a risk in there. And that risk is that this God who is infinitely more powerful than me is also infinitely more holy than I am. Like, he's always right. I'm not always right, even if I like to think that I am. Like he's always good. I'm not always good. He's always just. I'm not always just. And so you see, at the same time, we want God to be powerful. We also want God to be holy, or we need God to be holy. That creates a bit of a problem. Which is why it's so important we understand the third aspect of who God is, and that is that God is merciful. His mercy, in fact, dominates the rest of the song. And the whole rest of the song is how God is merciful to those who are hurting, how he has justice against those who are causing the hurt. God is merciful. Right? It's his power that causes him to be able to act. It's his holiness that makes his action always right, but it's his mercy that means you and I will not be destroyed by that. In fact, the chief characteristic of God throughout the Bible is his mercy. And mercy is different than pity. Right? Pity is like, I feel bad for you. Right? It's so sad that you're going through that. That's pity. Mercy is compassion. Right? That he feels for us, that he longs for us, that he loves us, that he is willing to get in the muck and the mire with us. That is what mercy means. Right? The God of the Bible, who is holy and powerful, is not distant or aloof. He is not disinterested in what you're going through. Instead, he is elevated and exalted, but he's not so proud that he would not also bring himself down to us. And so Mary reflects on that and said, that's what's happening here. The same mighty one who vanquished the armies of Pharaoh in the Red Sea is now somehow like growing in my womb. He has been willing to enter into the reality of human experience. He's been willing to become a child who is vulnerable and helpless. That's how good this God is. And she remembers that, and that prompts this worship in her. The God of the Bible is infinitely more powerful than you, which is what you need. The God of the Bible is infinitely more holy than you, which means that he is always right. But the good news about the God of the Bible is that he's merciful, which means he's willing to meet you where you are. And so why, of all the things that you can worship, should you worship this God? Why, of all the places that you could put your hope and your worship, should it be here? See, Luke includes an interesting hyperlink in this story. The word that Mary uses when she says that he topples the rulers, the mighty, from their thrones. It's the same word that he later uses to describe when Joseph of Arimathea takes the limp body of Jesus off the cross. He is brought down. You see, the God of the Bible is different than the rulers of our world. The rulers of our world want to get high and make a name for themselves and build a platform for themselves. The God of the Bible lowers himself. He humbles himself. He doesn't have to be toppled. He chooses to be brought down. He chooses to place his body on the cross. Jesus gives his life for us. And Luke wants you to have that. Like, this is the central defining picture of who God is. Like, what Jesus is accomplishing on the cross is the truest expression of God's power. Like, God is able to take on the power of sin and death and defeat it. It's the truest power of his holiness. He does not look the other way with our sin or anyone else's sin. He punishes sin. He deals with sin. And you see that in the limp body of Jesus on the cross. But then he's also merciful, meaning that he takes the punishment for that sin and all sin on the shoulders of Jesus. The clearest picture of his mercy. See, the defining picture of the God that we are to worship is Jesus, giving himself for us. Like, that's the gospel. And when you remember that, that's where your soul is stirred. And that's where worship begins, is I remember that the God of the Bible gave his son for me. That he's powerful and holy and merciful. And so I can come to him and I can place my hope in him. I can look to him and I can lift him up and he will not let me down. And so the question for you is, like, is that in your memory? Or like worship comes from remembering. Can you remember how God has worked in your life? Right? Like, for some of you, like, you're looking at what Jesus has done, but it has not yet become a memory for you. I mean, it has not yet entered into your experience. It has not yet become personal for you. You have not yet on your own kind of turned and trusted in what he has done for you. And so that's not a memory for you. That's information. It's only when you turn from your sin and trust in Jesus that becomes a memory for you. It now becomes a reality, an experience for you that you can now in turn worship God for what he's done for you. Don't let that be information. Let that be a memory. And for those of us that it is a memory, that should not just stay a memory. Meaning that just isn't like, oh, that happened to me in the past. Like that one day at church camp. Like, no, this is an everyday reality. Every day I'm lifting up and I'm looking to something. Make sure it's Jesus. Nothing compares to him. And so worship comes as we remember what God has done for us in Jesus. But worship doesn't leave us there. It always leads us somewhere. So let's talk for a moment about where worship leads us. What we see in Mary's song is that worship always leads to mercy and justice. Worship always leads to mercy and justice. We see in Mary's song that worship doesn't end when the song is over. Like, okay, great, worship set done, like let's move on. But the end goal of worship is the reconciliation of all things. Right? That God is working in his world. He is doing something in his world. And the result is that the exalted are laid low and the humble are lifted up. The end goal of worship is not a great worship set or an encouraging Sunday morning, but that would move us towards mercy and justice. It's not just what we do with our voices on a Sunday. It's also how we participate in God's mission on a Monday. Mary has experienced this in her own life. I mean, in this text, she describes herself as being of humble condition. Now, the language there is actually not about an interior spiritual condition. It's about an exterior economic condition. Like she's poor. Like she's not talking about, I'm poor, I'm small in spirit. No, it's like, I don't have two pennies to rub together. If you follow the story of Mary and Joseph, when they come to the temple later on, they come with doves. That's the kind of lowest economic rung of what you can bring to the temple. God did not choose the wealthy people in this story. He did not choose those who are at the top of the socioeconomic ladder. Instead, Mary says, I don't even have any money to care for this kid. God chose me. You see, she is reflecting on God's work, not just in her interior spiritual state, but also in her exterior socioeconomic state. And oftentimes we in our imagination divide kind of the spiritual things from the social things. Right? I say, well, I worship and that's spiritual, but then, what do I do with my money and what do I do with my vote and those kinds of things? Those are like secular, right? God doesn't really have an opinion on those things. We see in Mary's song that these things are woven together. Worship and mercy and justice are three chords of the same strand that runs throughout the Bible. And she's now reflecting on that. You see, once you remember that God is powerful, holy, and merciful, it will change how you view the world. It will change how you view who's close to God, who's far from God, who's living the good life, who's living the bad life. It will revolutionize all those things. You see, the world of idols that we live in, right, money, sex, and power, will always create exploitation. Right? If you worship money, you're going to always want to get more money. You're going to always want to have more. It's going to create haves and have-nots. If you worship sex, it's going to always perpetuate sexual exploitation and abuse in our world. If you worship power, you're always going to want to have people who are beneath you. Cultures are always going to want to have other cultures who are beneath them. You see, the idols that we worship create the exploitation that we hate. But when we look to and lift up the God of the Bible, what we find is a God who created a world of enough. It's us humans who've gone and grabbed what we can. Like God created a world of mercy and justice. He created a world of equality. He created a world of goodness. Like there was enough for everyone. But it's the idols that we cling to that cause us to perpetuate injustice. But in the biblical imagination, right, mercy and justice are not ends in and of themselves. Right? Meaning that the end goal of human history is not to achieve justice. It's not to achieve equality. It's not to fix all the world's problems. Rather, mercy and justice are the fruits of a life lived in worship. Meaning that as you root yourself in the God of the Bible, what will come out of you is mercy and justice. And so God is the end goal, but what he wants to do in your life is move you towards mercy and justice. And so worship and mercy and justice are always intertwined in the storyline of the Bible. Let me just give you two examples. Isaiah 58. Isn't this the fast I choose? This is God speaking. To break the chains of wickedness, to untie the ropes of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to tear off every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the poor and homeless into your house, to clothe the naked when you see him, and to not ignore your own flesh and blood? Amos 5, take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps, but let justice flow like water and righteousness like an unfailing stream. In other words, God is saying, stop singing and go care for people. Like, stop singing for a moment. Like, I don't want to listen to your worship songs. There's injustice in the streets. Like, these things are always intertwined. God is passionate about worship. He's passionate about mercy. He's passionate about justice. So our worship will find its fullest expression when we worship God and we engage in mercy and justice. Now, what does that actually look like? Right? Mercy and justice are really two sides of the same coin. Mercy, on the one hand, is kindness towards the afflicted and the hurting. We worship when we give towards people who have real tangible needs. It's an act of worship when we volunteer at a food pantry or when we give to a food pantry. It's an act of worship when we visit our sick community members, when we drop a meal off at their house. It's worship when we share gifts with families who can't afford it in this season. It's worship when we give money to the family fund that we have here at our church so that we can then, in turn, help meet needs in our community. That's all acts of worship, where we fill in the gap for people who are struggling. And we do that as a church really well. Like I've seen that. I've heard the stories. I see the giving. And I know the ways that we've been able to meet tangible needs. That's mercy. Mercy is when we meet felt needs in people's lives. And so we can and we should do that, and we do that well. But the other side of the coin is a little bit more challenging, and that is justice. Justice is when we make efforts to correct the conditions that led to the need for mercy. Right? When we think not just, okay, how can I meet this immediate need, but why is there a need? Why is it that people can't afford things? Why is it that people are struggling? Why is it that our neighborhood is plagued with these kinds of issues, right? That is when we work towards justice. We like the mercy side because it costs us something, but it doesn't cost us a lot sometimes. The justice side is where we have to ask big, scary questions. Justice in the Bible, if you read through it, is both retributive and restorative. Retributive justice is what I think we typically think of when we think of justice, is like someone did something wrong and so they should be punished. And that is clear throughout the pages of the Bible. But the other side of justice that's also as clear, if not more, is restorative justice. And that is where, as a community, you say, we need to make sure that people can thrive and flourish. We need to make sure that there are systems and structures in place so that no one goes hungry, so that no one finds themselves enslaved. We need to do both of those things, correcting the conditions and the systems that lead to people being hurt. I mean, you can hear it throughout Mary's song here. Like, her worship does not stay in the realm of the personal and the spiritual. It invades into the political and the social. I mean, these are not like spiritual kings being toppled. She's not saying like, oh, God's going to topple the spiritual kings in my heart. No, this is like real kings that she's talking about. This is not spiritually hungry people are going to be fed. These are real hungry people, likely her and her family. Right? Like the worship that she is experiencing, the worship that she is singing, and her understanding what God is doing here leads her from the realm of the spiritual and the personal into the realm of the economic, the political, and the social. And that's what worship in the Bible always does. Now, justice in the Bible is almost always directed towards four categories of people. There's a writer, Nicholas Wolsteroff, he described this as the quartet of the vulnerable. The four that the Bible is particularly concerned about are the poor, the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow. The poor, the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow. These are the people with the least rights, the least power, and the most likely to be exploited and oppressed in the time of the Bible and in the time that we live in today. They are often portrayed in politics as a drain on our resources, as a barrier to economic prosperity, as people who are worth less than the tax-paying citizen. But our worship of the God of the Bible only finds its true voice when we are actively advocating for those people. Because here's the thing, if you read Mary's song, who is God on the side of? It's very rare that you find God in certain places in the Bible saying, I'm on that team. But here he's saying, I'm on the team of the poor, the oppressed, the orphan, and the widow. I'm on the team of those who are lowly, and I'm going to elevate them, and I'm going to topple those who are at the top. I mean, if we want to be on God's side, which team are we going to pick? Now, who should we be advocating for? If we want to be on God's side, then we should be working with him in that work as well. That is where our true worship finds its fullest expression. Not just in songs sung well, but in lives bent towards mercy and justice. See, if our churches are full of worshipers on Sunday, but there is pain and injustice in our streets, then our worship has not met its full end yet. If we sing the best songs in the world, if we worship the God of power, holiness, and mercy on Sunday, but we ignore or even turn our backs on those who are being exploited in our world, then our worship is not yet complete. It is when we worship the God of the Bible, full of power, holiness, and mercy, and as that begins to change and transform our imagination, that then we will worship him not just on Sunday in our songs, but in our communities as we advocate for those who are hurting the most. See, Mary's song ultimately teaches us that worship doesn't begin with us, it begins with God. It begins with his power, his holiness, his mercy. He has done great things because he is strong enough to do those things. He is holy, but he didn't remain distant. He is merciful, and so he came near. And when that moves from just information to a lived memory in us, what will come out of us is more than a song. It will be a life oriented around Jesus, shaped by his mercy, and pulled towards justice. That's what Mary's song is singing. Is that the song of your life?